All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're tackling a business classic, the SWOT analysis. But I want you to forget everything you learned in a dusty old textbook. We're going to treat this like a high-level consultant would, not as a simple checklist, but as a full-blown strategic audit. This is what separates the companies that win from the ones that are just, well, putting out fires. So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the big picture, what a strategic audit really is. Then we'll slice it into internal versus external factors. After that, we'll lay down the rules of the game for doing this right, talk about the big mistakes people always make, and finally, we'll see how this all plays out in the real world with a great example. Okay, let's dive in. The whole point of a SWOT analysis, when you really get down to it, is to shift your brain. You've got to move away from just reacting to problems as they pop up and start thinking about intentionally positioning yourself in the market. Seriously, think of this as the absolute launchpad for every single smart move you're going to make from here on out. Now, this is not, and I repeat, not about making 4 boring lists. The real power, the magic of SWOT, happens in that juxtaposition. It's about smashing your internal reality right up against the external forces of the world. The ultimate goal here is alignment. It's about making sure that what your company is actually good at lines up with what the world needs and will pay for. So to get to that perfect alignment, you first have to understand the great divide at the very heart of SWOT. You've got to split the universe into 2 totally different buckets, the stuff you can control inside your own walls, and the crazy stuff happening outside that you can only react to and navigate. And this slide right here, it nails that divide. On one side, you have your internal world, everything happening inside your own house. Those are your strengths and weaknesses. And on the other side, you've got the external world, those huge waves of opportunity and the scary storms of threats that you just have to learn how to ride. Let's kick things off with strengths. These are the assets you actually own that give you an edge. It could be something you can touch, like a fat bank account, or something less tangible, like one of those competitive moats, where your product gets better the more people use it. Or maybe it's that you have your own first-party data. That's gold. It's information you've collected yourself that nobody else has access to. A real strength has to actively make your position in the market better. Now for the flip side. Weaknesses. These are the gaps in your armor, the things that make you vulnerable. I want you to think of these as unlocked doors that your competitors are just dying to walk through. Things like creaky old infrastructure that can't grow with you, or relying on people to do things manually. These are huge liabilities that any smart competitor is going to pounce on. All right, now we look outside. Let's talk opportunities. And look, these aren't just wishful thinking. They are real, active trends happening out in the world. You've got the explosion in AI, brand new markets opening up globally, a massive cultural shift towards sustainability. These are powerful waves building out on the ocean. The big question is, do you have a surfboard ready to catch one? And finally, of course, there are threats. These are the storms gathering on the horizon. They can be economic, like wild price swings. They can be environmental, and I mean the very real impact of climate change on supply chains. Or they can be political. These are the risks you absolutely have to see coming so you can build your defenses. Okay, so we know the 4 pieces of the puzzle: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But, knowing the pieces is pretty useless if you don't know how to put them together. So this next part is all about the rules of engagement, how to run a strategic audit that actually gets you somewhere. Rule number 1 for any great strategist is what I call the 70% rule. Waiting until you are 100% certain about something is a death trap. It's called analysis paralysis. And by the time you have that perfect information, guess what? The opportunity is long gone. The best in the business know that if you're about 70% sure of a direction, it is time to move. Go. You can always adjust as you go. In strategy, speed itself is a weapon. So how do you actually do that? Well, here's the process. First, you filter all the noise. Is the information you're looking at relevant? Is it timely? Is it credible? Second, you have to prioritize. Don't treat every little thing as equally important. You're looking for the key leverage points, those magical spots where one small strength can crack open a massive opportunity. And finally, you map the landscape. You need to know who the other players are so you can position your best assets for maximum impact. All these rules, all these processes, they're really all designed to do just one thing. And this quote just nails it. The whole entire goal is to cut through all the chaos and find clarity. Because once you can see the chessboard clearly, you can spot your most powerful moves. That clarity, that's your ultimate advantage. Now, knowing the rules is one thing, but avoiding the traps is a whole other ballgame. It is so easy to do a flawed analysis, even when you have the best intentions. So let's talk about the common mistakes that turn this powerful tool into a totally useless corporate checkbox exercise. The first, and maybe the biggest mistake, is what we call the puppy approach. Chasing every single ball that gets thrown. You see a dozen different opportunities and you try to go after all of them at once. But real strategic success just doesn't work like that. It comes from intense focus, from concentrating all your energy on one single, decisive point of attack. Next up, confusing vanity metrics with actual strengths. Look, having 1 million followers on social media feels great. It strokes the ego. But if it's not actually leading to more revenue, better customer retention, or higher conversion rates, it is not a strategic strength. You have to be brutally honest with yourself about what actually moves the needle for your business. Arrogance is the absolute enemy of good strategy. Please do not fall into the trap of just writing your brand name down as your #1 strength and calling it a day. A famous brand isn't some magical gift. It's the result of a bunch of smart moves you made in the past. It doesn't mean you get a free pass on making smart moves now. And finally, you've got to avoid static thinking. The market is not a fixed photograph. It's a dynamic, messy, constantly changing video. A SWOT analysis can't be some document you create once a year and then just file away in a drawer. It has to be a living, breathing guide that you are constantly revisiting and tweaking as the world changes around you. At the end of the day, the entire reason you avoid these mistakes, the reason you stay focused and honest, is to find what the legendary Jack Welch is talking about in this quote. The goal of your SWOT is to find a real, defensible competitive advantage. And if you can't find one, then you're probably not ready to compete. So, with all that theory and all those warnings rattling around in our heads, let's make this real. Let's make it concrete. We're going to take this entire framework and apply it to a real-world example from the agribusiness sector, and we'll look at what the strategic landscape looks like for the near future. Okay, let's look at the raw data for a modern agribusiness. Internally, a huge strength is their use of blockchain for traceability. Consumers love that. It builds trust. But their weakness is a classic one. They're way too dependent on middlemen who are just gobbling up all the profit. Externally, the big opportunity is this massive shift to online marketplaces, which would let them sell directly to customers. And the threat that's always looming? Climate volatility. But remember, this is just the raw data. The magic comes next. You see, raw data is totally useless without a plan of action. This matrix, this is where you forge your strategy. This isn't a passive list. It's an active weapon. You start combining the quadrants. For example, you take your strength in blockchain data and you pair it with the opportunity of direct-to-consumer channels. Bam! You've got a growth strategy targeting high-end organic consumers. Or you look at your weakness, that dependence on middlemen, and the threat of climate change. That might lead you to a survival strategy where you shift to different, more resilient products. This right here is where your analysis becomes a battle plan. And that brings us to our final thought for today. This entire process, from figuring out your strengths to mapping them against opportunities, it's all designed to help you answer one simple question. Where can we be first? As this brilliant quote says, trying to be better is really, really hard. But being first, that creates an advantage that makes everyone else play catch up to you. A great SWOT analysis doesn't just help you compete, it shows you where you can lead. So the real question is, where will you be first?